Hi there. Thank you for joining us to the Bundesblock and INATBA workshop and panel about EUIPO, counterfeiting, and digital product passport. The original title is I had it. Yeah, okay. Let's start. So, my name is Daniel, and I'm the board member of Bundesblock and responsible for the supply chain task group. And also working as CEONI for the CEO, working constantly with the digital product passwords in the horizontal area in the software. And I'm joined with Izzat-Begum. She's my co-host today. And she's a tax expert from Paris. And we have Joachim Schwerin, he's principal economist with the EU Commission and in the Department of Digi Growth. And we have Nicolas Hauw, this project and policy advisor at the adversary department in the EUIPO, as well as Patrick Struckmann. He is a researcher at the TU Dortmund. And Carsten Stöcker, he is the CEO of Fireside. Izzat-Begum, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. My name is Izzat-Begum. I'm based in Paris and I'm an international tax expert. I've been working for 25 years in industry. Today I'm joining you and hosting this session along Daniel as a board member of INATBA, a co-chair of the finance working group in INATBA, but also co-chair of the Industrial Blockchain Task Force. And you will hear today about how blockchain can be used and applied to the industry. And this is what we are trying also to give a flavor of in a report that will be released in the next 2 to 3 weeks from the Industrial Blockchain Task Force of INATBA. And I am joined also by Nicolas, a fellow compatriot. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
تhank you very much, Izzat-Begum. My name is Nicolas. I'm very pleased to be with you today. So yes, French, but based in Alicante, where the EUIPO, the EU Intellectual Property Office, is located. It's an EU agency that is in charge of registering trademark and design in the EU. But it also works in collaboration with a lot of the IP ecosystems, including law enforcement authorities, but intermediaries at large, when it comes to enforcement and providing them not only just with market studies, but also with significant tools. And you will be hearing today one of the tools, which is called EBSI-ELSA. I've been working in the blockchain field since 2017, and I had a different position, previously working for 10 years in Brussels, in the EU bubble as project policy advisors in different aspects, in different organizations. And I moved in Alicante 5 years ago, where I joined the EUIPO and supported my services ever since. Thank you very much. Daniel, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Joachim, can you introduce yourself?
Of course. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Izzat-Begum and Nicolas. As said, very happy to see you here. Principal economist in the unit responsible for the digital transformation of industry in DG Grow. DG Grow represents the real economy in the European Commission. I've been working in the space in the Commission basically from day one. The Commission has declared in 2015-2016 blockchain as one of 4 breakthrough technologies relevant for all policy fields in Europe for the next decades, next to artificial intelligence, to genomics and to quantum computing. So you see the relevance of that. We have said that the main applications in blockchain will lie in the real economy. And therefore, I'm particularly happy that with Nicolas, we have the driving force here of the EBSI-ELSA project, which is our lead project in this domain, but there are a number of others, and very happy to discuss all of this today with you.
Great, thanks, Joachim. Carsten, please introduce yourself.
My name is Carsten Stöcker. I'm founder of Schwerin. I'm a physicist and founder of Schwerin. And at Schwerin, we focus on digital identity solutions for regulated industries. And we primarily look into organizational identity and object identity, also known as digital product passports. And on the organizational identity side, so we are also part of EUIPO Wallet large-scale pilots, focusing on organizational identity solutions with the EUIPO Wallet. and collaborating with national registries to inherit data, identity data from national registries. And on the digital product passport side, yeah, we do a lot of work here in Europe in different ecosystems, primarily in the automotive supply chain. And we have a solution in operations in the US pharma supply chain. Maybe some of you have heard about MediLedger. So we are not doing MediLedger, but we are kind of, let's say, plugging on top of a MediLedger solution. And MediLedger is one of the one and only blockchain supply chain solutions that is for years in production, in operations. And it's pretty interesting to see, maybe we touch it today, what are differences between Germany, European Union, and US in terms of perception of blockchain and readiness for adoption for prime time use cases. And that's probably also something we address, different geographically preferences. Yeah, and that's what we're in operations and focus a lot on digital product passports. And one of the aspects also IP licenses. And that's probably what we also discussed today.
Great. Thank you, Carsten. Patrick, you're next. Introduce yourself, please.
Do you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Patrick Struckmann. I'm research associate at the chair of enterprise logistics at Dortmund. So in Dortmund, we are like the logistic ecosystem for blockchain here in Dortmund, together with the Fraunhofer IML and a few other chairs. I'm here today because I'm a part of my research focuses on track and trace scenarios in supply chains, especially with a blockchain focus. We in Dortmund are working together with Daniel and the Fraunhofer IML on the implementation and realization of a DVP-like system for 3D printing. And I've been working in research for a few years now, focused on the combination of 3D printing and blockchain. In my personal research area, I deal with the reinforcement learning in the field of supply chain resilience, which is also closely linked to transparency in supply chains. So I'm looking forward to discussing with you today and get new insights of the new technologies and regulatory insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, my notes started again, and I'm not lost again, so I can give you a brief overview about what's to come in the next. The next step is the EU IPO call for interest, EBSI-ELSA's role as an EU Lighthouse blockchain project, presented by Nicolas Hauw. The next step would be, I think, around 5.5, a fireside chat or the panel. It depends if Sebastian, the panelist, the presenter, is on board at the time. If not, we will change to the panel. And the fireside chat would be the EU Commission Strategy for Industrial Innovation and Sovereignty with Joachim Schwerin and Sebastian Becker. And after that, we have the panel for digital product passports, anti-counterfeiting and circular economies, how to orchestrate the European approaches with Carsten, Izzat-Begum, Rajan, and Joachim Schwerin, Patrick Struckmann, and of course, Nicolas Hauw. So I hope you like the panel, and of course, you're interested in all these topics, and I wish you a very, very good evening. We start with Nicolas. The EU IPO call for interest, EBSI-ELSA's role as an EU Lighthouse blockchain project. Please, Nicolas, do you need slides?
I have some slides that I would like to share to the audience. So if you could give me some permission to share, that would be brilliant. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Okay, I suppose that I trust that you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, this is brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity to present a bit our project. I've already presented myself, and I've already presented a bit what EUIPO does. The question is why the EUIPO, as an EU agency, has decided to delve into blockchain technology and also try and solve issues related to supply chain transparency, whereas the only thing that we essentially do normally would be registering trademark applications. And so during my today's presentation, I will explain to you how we can use trademarks as an enabler for blockchain as a whole, for product passport, but also for the logistic chain. Before we do that, though, I want to explain also the mission that is behind this. One of the main reasons why EUIPO has decided to step into this area and venture in the unknown of blockchain was to fight fakes. That's our core mission. And fakes, just for the audience to understand a bit the magnitude of the issue, is alarming and has a huge impact on our economy. We have every year 6% of imported products that are fake. That's the equivalent of the GDP combined of the three Baltic states in the EU. That's huge. And this parallel economy not only ruin our genuine business, but it also support what we call polycriminality, using unregulated worker, often in dire condition and regardless of the environmental impact. So what people often do not realize is that when they are buying a fake pair of sneakers in the market, they might end up feeding money to drug trafficking. And we have studies that have shown exactly that. Exactly the fact that counterfeit is just an easy way to make money for these criminals to get other activities running. Low risk, high rewards. And so that has also a direct impact on our public organization. And Europe is paying this impact in terms of administrative burden. 42 million of products are detained yearly at EU borders. So you can imagine think what that means in terms of effort put onto the public realm to deal with the situation. And of course, at the end of the line, we have consumers that not only suffers delays, but also a large portion that would not even realize they have bought counterfeits, which has an impact, of course, on brand reputation. As a product is being produced without complying to all the safety and security regulation, this poses grave dangers to them in terms of security and health. And if people are not convinced enough, I encourage you to do a quick internet search and type impact on skin of fake body cream, just to see how disastrous this can be. Or you can imagine a plane or a train with a fake spare part that does not function well. This is the magnitude of the situation we're in, which pose grave health and environmental risk during the entire life cycle of these products, from their production to their end use. So we can't simply underestimate the challenge and the social challenge that we have at play. As such, the system can only be an ecosystem response. We have to have all the stakeholders involved in the supply chain that can deal together with the issue of counterfeits. And first, for that, what we need is to identify all the people that are supposed to receive or exchange the end product, starting with the brand owners, because they are the alpha and the omega of the product authenticity. They know their product. Second, we need to ensure that we have anti-tampering and anti-counterfeiting features on the product so that it can stay publicly genuine throughout the whole journey. The third, what we also need is a whole information exchange system for all the involved stakeholders within the logistic chain so that internal preparation can be made to transit or receive the product in anticipation. And this part simply cannot be given over to the public. It has to stay on a need-to basis and remain in control by the brand. Finally, we should create an irrefutable, auditable trail of product journey until it reaches its final destination. And this part, it can and it should link with the last mile and the end consumer delivery. So that's a bit the idea of the ecosystem challenge. Now, how do we jump from this state of play and to blockchain? Well, in the EU, we are very lucky to be at the frontier of innovation on that side. And hear me out for a second. What we have at the EU level is what is called the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, which has been running for more than 5 years now. Think of highways as they were built 100 years ago, built by the public and then taken over from the private entities. We're trying to do exactly that for blockchain. We're trying to set up a series of blockchain nodes that are held by the member states in order to create a safe haven to then provide services, blockchain services, to public and private identified identities. And so what that means for us, EUIPO, for example, is that we can use this European blockchain service infrastructure. This is the EBSI of the EBSI-ELSA part. We can use that infrastructure to leverage our own trademark numbers that we have in our registered database, where we know who the good guys are, who have registered their brand. And so we can give them a credential, a digital one, that they will be then storing in their digital wallet. And the beauty of this system is that they can then leverage this as they see fit. They can present it to whoever needs to see it publicly, and the public recipient can verify. It doesn't have to trust. It can verify that the identity is real. On top of that, EBSI also gives us something else that we like to use in our system, which is a classic timestamping module to create this auditable trails of event throughout the product logistic journey. So if we look at what we have right now, before any EUIPO direct intervention, is that the capability of identifying the brand owner, and also to have event notarization throughout the supply journey. But there are a number of missing pieces beyond the information system. We need also trustable data. We need a way to verify product authenticity, possibly with upward feedback mechanism for the rest to the parties. And this is where we come in. I mentioned briefly that we are registering trademarks in the EU. One of the perks of blockchain is that you can transfer a lot of data, and you can share a lot of information in near real time. On the downside of the blockchain, and it has been mentioned by several literature already, is that if you don't have good data, you're still sharing wrong data. And so what we're trying to address here on the left side of this slide is through another project, which is called the IP Register on Blockchain, where the EUIPO has created a blockchain node between EUIPO and all the national intellectual property offices in the EU. They have half of them have joined this mechanism, in order to share this trusted data of registered brand owners. What that means is if a brand is not registered in our system, but it is in, I don't know, France, then we would be able to pick up this information and be able to detect a brand that has legitimate right over French territories for their trademark. And so we needed to do that to have clean data. That allows us then to do what ELSA wants to provide, which is the part related to authenticity certificate and provenance notarization. All right, let me detail that a bit further. You think we're looking at something that is very far-reaching as usual for blockchain. Well, it's not. Our minimum viable product went into a restricted go live last Monday, meaning that what I'm talking to you about is already available in a restricted form, but already available. Let me show you what that means. This is the stack of different modules and information that we have shared with the different parties that have been with us in this journey, which we started back in 2018. Last Monday, we've issued 4 items that we released to our forum members. On one end, we have released a manual service issuing trademark credentials as digital signature. We're combining here the identity register and the verifiable credentials assets that you can see on the top left of this slide right here. This service as a whole allows EUIPO to provide IP representatives with blockchain-based credential of their trademark, which can then be verified at any time by any third party. This service is only temporary because we intend to replace this temporary manual service that we are issuing right now into a full-fledged automatic self-service tool, which we call the IP wallet, and that you can see on the down here, which is going to happen in December 2024. There is a reason why we have decided to leave this only piece out of the equation yet, and I'll come back to that later. The second set of service that we have provided is the authentication package, which you can see here. And you can see there is a tick here, which I'll explain very briefly. So what is the authentication package? It's essentially a generator of digital labels containing product information and the blockchain-based trademark credential. And so what it allows IP representatives, when I say IP representatives, think brands, it allows them to link their trademark to the product, company information, journey of the product into a single self-verifiable document, which can be linked then to the physical product. The way you link this authentication package to the physical product is through the serialization code of the product. We'll come back to that probably during the demonstration, but also during the panel. To liaise with this authentication package, we have also released the NFT viewer, which is an open source serialization scanning tool. And what it does, it's very simple. it gives you the code to look into the authentication package and do a certain level of checks. It's going to check whether this authentication package has the EUIPO verifiable credential, whether they're still valid at the moment of the scan, and if everything is fine in terms of the information between the authentication package and the potential NFT that has been created to represent the physical product through a digital twin. Finally, looking at the top right of the slide, we have the logistic module. Now, this is a peer-to-peer network allowing parties in the supply chain, IP representatives, logistic intermediaries, customs authorities to share digital information and track shipment and product from the manufacturing site until the end destination. So aside from the enhanced transparency in the logistic operation for all the parties, this allows specifically custom authorities in charge of EU border control to better assess shipments and fast-track their clearance. It's a lot to take, but you'll see it's actually easier than what it looks, as always. Let me boil this down into two different concepts. On one hand, we have the module which is related to the digital creation of a digital twin creation of a physical product. And so for this to occur, what is happening exactly? Well, we have the identity register and the verifiable credential together with a wallet, which serves EUIPO to give to a brand who asks for it a verifiable credential. That verifiable credential will give you the trademark number, the logo, and it's a JSON file, which is exportable onto any other wallet. And it can be used really in any digital content the brand sees fit. But using the authentication in combination with the verifiable credential, what EUIPO provides to the brand is a system to select and seal information about the product using this very same verifiable credential. And so you can imagine that amongst the different information that we could see, you can think of the product serialization, but you can also have, for example, the years of production, or the country or the continent it intends to reach to be sold. And of course, finally, as I mentioned before, you have the NFT. So you have this digital product with a digital connector, and using the NFT viewer, you can either go directly to the authentication package or through the NFT to the authentication package as well. It's not very difficult when you think about this in a global, holistic way. In a normal situation, anyone scanning a serialization QR code, for example, would be led to an intermediary space. And nothing is new here. It has been the standard practice in the industry for a few years. You would land on the product webpage, you could consult the information about the product. It's just a one-way street. But now what we're doing with EBSI-ELSA is that either in the web page directly or through an NFT containing a link to the authentication package, you can use the NFT viewer to validate the product information and the brand identity. And this is what you could see if, for example, I will show you a bit how this could look like. Let me humor you for a second. This is the authentication package. It's essentially a place where you can create an authentication label. So what you're going to do is that you're going to create a Barbie dolly. That's very nice. I'm going to use the FS platform as an NFT platform creations with my company names Barbsies. I'm going to give it my physical URL, sorry. I'm going to skip IPEF for now. I could give it a JITIN number, a image URL if I had it one on my brand website. Any anti-tampering technologies that I have, two-factor authentication, for example, so it could link with this. And then I'm going to say that the destination of this country, of this product is Belgium, and I'm going to do that. It comes from China, and I intend to sell it this year, right? I'll have a retailer probably because I'm not selling this directly myself, so that's going to be in Belgium using Babazon. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to seal this information I just showed you. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my IP wallet, which is here, what you can see here, where I have my DOL trademarks. And what the system is going to do is that it's going to use this IP wallet to seal, to give me the signature inside this authentication package. Once it's done, then you would end up with a JSON file. And that's really it. If you want to look at what that means later, at the end of the day, the brand would create a digital twin. It will link the NFT with the authentication package. And here, how would that look like? We've done this exercise during the Go Live last week. And you can see in this slide, which we'll of course share at the end of this session, where you have the NFT viewer, which you could directly use right now. And you have two examples of a QR code of products that we have created last week. One, which is explaining the EUIPO credentials. So you have a digital twin with the EUIPO credentials, but it's not linked with the NFT. Whereas the other is a digital twin that has the EUIPO credential and is linked to a real NFT. And how we do that? We do that because in the authentication package, you give the NFT URI. And so you're linking to the physical and the NFT together. Right. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll try to speed up, Daniel. The second part of the story is really a peer-to-peer submodule. So it's something very simple for anybody who has already used a peer-to-peer system before. Imagine that every stakeholders in the system, so the brands, the freight forwarders, carriers, have installed this logistic module on their side. What it allows them to do is to share information, and the type of information is very simple. You have a brand. The brand will ask freight forwarders for a shipment quote, receive an offer from the freight forwarder using these logistic modules. And so they will eventually start a journey of the product together with other products inside a shipment. We're using very standard protocol here, IATA1 records for the logistic part. And what we are also doing is that we are identifying the logistic module of the brand, again, because we are EUIPO and we're capable to do that. So the good part is the data can be trusted, that it comes from the brand, and then you can have a safe exchange and know the information. What type of information would you see? Well, again, if we were just to look at a type of node, this is a logistic node. This is not very sexy, but what I can show you is how this logistic nodes would eventually give you information about, let's use the t-shirt and sport clothes, where I'm going to have the segment, the pieces, and if I look at the pieces, I will have a product ID. In this case, I have a product XYZ with this ID. The brand will own a company, the name, the type of product, its NIST classification, its HS code, the product identifier or GTIN, and also its NFT. Everybody in the chain can see that. As long as the offer has been accepted, then we have a situation whereby the freight forwarder, the brands, and the carriers knows what they're shipping and where it's supposed to go. And the beautiful part of this is that it allows us to do something that customs was never able to have before. We are giving them, through the freight forwarder, the capability to see products inside shipments, inside vessels, even before the products have left the manufacturing site. And so the powerful part about this is that they are capable of looking at this data and being capable of understanding that this vessel contains at least these type of products, which have all the information they need to do their risk assessment, so they can fast clear these products. And of course, if you want to have more information, and this is where the timestamping part works, is that we also have for any party in the chain the capability to notarize event. And of course, it would connect with the APIs of the different logistic operators in order to notarize events about the product during his journey. So the custom officer will be able to know where the product is at and when it's supposed to arrive at the borders. The freight forwarder would be able to know if the customs has given clearance or has inspected the product. And voila. That's a bit the story about this logistic module.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. It sounds a little bit too good to be true. So tell me, what's the catch? If, in other words, what are external challenges that are still to be figured out to make it as optimal as possible? And number two, perhaps we can start with internal areas of improvement of the solution. So both internal and external, please, kindly.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I can stop sharing because the rest can be also mentioned during the conversation. So the catch is the following. All of this is open source, which means that anybody can pick it up. And that's why we wanted to have it as widely as adopted as possible. But as any blockchain solution, the main concern, the main challenge is the adoption itself. Is it enough to give this for free? Is it enough to pull all the different actors together in order to start a new journey using open source code? We had in the past other blockchain service providers, such as, for example, Traillines back in the days with the logistics, who has done a great attempt at doing exactly that. And the difference between what exists out there right now and what we are proposing is the open source part. We are giving this to the community to pick up. And so this is going to be the main challenge, is the adoption and the governance of this, to make sure that the tools that we have, the assets we have released, are being not only picked up, but refined by the different parties. It's not an easy feat. If you think about brands, it means thinking, okay, so how am I supposed to link this digital twin creation and the shipment creation into my existing system? If you think about freight forwarder, they will ask you the same question. If you think about custom, that will tell you, yes, it's fine, but I have millions of products to check. I'm not going to go one by one, checking if they're inside the node. So how can you give me a better elevator pitch as a custom, something that is quick, where I can see the data and I can trust it? So there are challenges, but they can be ironed out if we work as an ecosystem, and that's a bit the main catch. And this is also why the reason why we went into a restricted go live, because what we wanted to do during the end of this year is to do pilots in live environment. And this is why we have this call for interest, which is open to every parties until, well, actually mid-July, until the 14th of July. So our intent is to have this ecosystem response going through live environment piloting with brands, freight forwarders, and customs that are happy to participate, to share the result in December of how this went in front of the EU institutions, a wider audience, and also to feed in existing or upcoming regulation that could beneficiate from such a good example. We've mentioned already in the title DPP, we could mention customs reform, we could mention IDES regulation. There are a couple of other regulations that are in play here, which we could discuss. But this is a bit, Izzat-Begum, to just answer your question, what are the catch and the challenges we see?
Okay.
Nicolas, thank you. Just a clear question. Where can we partake? Is it on the website of the EUIPO, or where can we find it if we want to take part as a brand?
So as a brand, you can already join the EBSI-ELSA forum. It's free. It's an MS Team group where all the assets have been released and they're being kept there. But anyone can pick up this asset and look at them in detail. What you could do if you're interested in doing these pilots is on the EBSI-ELSA webpage, you have the call for interest sub-web page where all the information on how to participate are displayed. We have done our main due diligence on our side from EUIPO and also checked with some customs, and you will see in the call for interest webpage that some customs already said that they are interested in doing this if the brand wishes to do that. And the rest is just finding your talking with your current freight forwarder and see if they would be up for the challenge, or use some of the previous freight forwarders that have joined our EBSI-ELSA forum for the last 5-6 years. That would be happy to help as well.
Great, thank you. I think let's dive into the panel now smoothly and bring up Carsten, Joachim, Patrick, Izzat-Begum, and yourself. Just wanted to know, is your solution, what you're providing, is it agnostic to any blockchain, or how can you imagine that?
Yeah, it's completely agnostic to any blockchain, really, because as you could see, what we're offering here is a way for EUIPO to provide verifiable credential to the brands, but they do that after the way they're using this after, whether it's just a digital signature or together with the product information, they could use this file, again, it's a JSON file, wherever they please. So they can do that with NFT or not. They could do that with perhaps other digital twin technologies they see fit. So not only we're agnostic to the blockchain platform you would use or the blockchain layer you would use, but we're also even agnostic in a way to the blockchain itself, because
and the platforms.
The platforms too. The only thing that we're relying on for blockchain was to the issuance of this verifiable credential, and then later on for the logistic module to do the notarization. But all of that, it doesn't require any work from the brands or the other people in the ecosystem. They just have to understand that for document keeping, which again in blockchain it's very anonymized and difficult to almost impossible to fake. This is done under the EBSI network, blockchain network. But the rest, it's up for them to grab and use wherever they see fit.
Great, thank you. Joachim, you are the principal economist within the EU Commission and DG Grow. Give us a little intake about the EBSI-ELSA and the DG Grow, please.
I think what this example perfectly demonstrates is the relevance of blockchain technology to industry. And with industry, we basically mean every process that is associated to production, to trading of whatever goods and services throughout the value chains. The Commission, as I said before, has a long track record, basically since the uptake of the technology a long time ago, to devote resources to finding ideal applications, I would say, to demonstrate what is possible. We did a study, for example, in 2018, 2019, looking at potential industrial applications of blockchain technology. At that time, it was a fictional exercise with a lot of market participants, a few hundreds, to develop 9 prototypical blockchain-based solutions throughout every part of the value chain to demonstrate the potential of the technology. And at that time, it was more or less science fiction. Now we are in 2024, and I think what Nicolas and his team have been doing demonstrates that this can very well work in practice. But there's a number of issues, of course, that we have to remember, and that makes it a little bit complicated. But I would still say that we are very much in the lead in the real economy, as indeed we are in the lead in the financial sector, for example, with the MiCA regulation that at least puts something out for discussion. One thing is that industry in all our industrial ecosystems, leading companies, small companies, wherever, are already very well aware of blockchain, but find it difficult to develop their own solutions. If you speak to the leading German industrial companies, for example, and you name them Siemens, Evonik, Daimler, whoever is there, they all have blockchain teams. They all are looking into potential use cases because they know that, for example, micropayment structures, smart contract-based solutions that automate proceedings, everything that can ensure the integrity of all those myriads of documents that have to be produced and have to be controlled, benefits from blockchain solutions. But there's a couple of issues that are problematic for them, and that's mainly the interconnectivities. So how do these various things come together? That requires, I would say, a basic infrastructure, as Nicolas has described, that serves as a starting point. And that is very similar in the blockchain tech stack as it is, for example, in the AI tech stack and other things. At the end of the day, you would need some underlying structure that allows for the various solutions to come together. Because what the Commission will not do, and Nicolas has explained that very well, is we will not prescribe any technical solution. We are agnostic to the types of blockchain. We are agnostic to whatever you do. It's only when there is a use case that we have certain principles. One is open source, that is extremely important to us, also safeguarded until now by EBSI, that everything we do, EUIPO, the colleagues in DG Digits, it's all on their website, is open source. The second thing is, and that is for me even more important, privacy and data protection. GDPR is the first crypto regulation as I see it in Europe. And the massive problem that industry is facing, like every one of us is indeed facing in a digital economy, is that if you take all of these elements together, imagine all the data of you that exist on certain documents that authorities think they have to verify for whatever reasons. Anti-counterfeiting is one of them. fighting forced labor or child labor, environmental standards, you name all of these things that are now out there. Authorities want to control that, so authorities require more and more documents that are out there. If this is centralized in a sort of data pool that is accessible to everyone, you have basically the wet dream of the Soviet Union and China and probably the big tech combined. So it's the fundamental opposite to what we aim at. Blockchain is a decentralized technology. Everything that the Commission has done so far is taking a bottom-up approach, is taking these things very seriously. And we want to demonstrate that it works. And EBSI-ELSA works. It has now to be taken up, but I think it's in the self-interest of industry to do so. Because in the future, with things like the digital product passport and others, it will become more and more mandatory to have all these documents out there. And speaking of the digital product passport, in a way, what Nicolas has been describing is a digital product passport. It is a document that ensures the integrity of something that has produced, and that is the nature of things. Actually, the whole work that the Commission is doing, has been doing, will do, is not so much on individual data, but is on documents that are in the public domain for regulatory purposes as such, where we ensure that these standards are being met. I mentioned it, open source, privacy on a need-to-know basis. At the end of the day, my idea on these things is that all of this functions as sort of COVID passport. It is either green or it is red. Now, you can have a lot of variations on that. In chemicals regulation, you have thresholds to meet, and other things you have to have more granular information. But I think that no customs authority, no police authority, no one who's around there needs to know anything about us. The only thing that they need to know is it okay? Is it not okay? And that is something that we consider as a very strong aspect here, where again, it's in the safe interest of industry to go along this route. And I don't know what other parts of the world are doing, although I know, but I think it's not as good as this thing here. But take the elements that a public service can provide. That's, as I said, the basic infrastructure. That is standardization, interoperability, where we do a lot of work indeed to find the basis to put that together. That is also to help the industry develop the skills and the education to people to work on that. And Nicolas, we have worked a lot in the past on actually fitting the EBSI-ELSA project with the skills available to all these logistic companies that are out there. What people on the ground that have limited skills want to do is they want to scan stuff. That is a limiting factor. I mean, you cannot explain blockchain to everyone out there and hope that they apply. These people are on the ground, they get a box of something, they put it from left to right, and they want to scan some piece of information, and that is what they do. So you have to make your solution compatible with that, but still do that job. And I think these aspects taken together is already very ambitious, but it is also at the same time a modest part of the whole industrial fabric. That is what a public sector is supposed to do. The rest is for the private companies to take it up, but let's not forget they have the obligation to produce a couple of documents, will become more. And therefore, to use zero knowledge proofs, other data protection technologies in a system that ensures need to know that is open source, etc., for me is the gold standard of everything that you do in the industry.
Thank you for that, Joachim. What are the next steps for EBSI-ELSA? What's coming ahead and what's the roadmap?
So I've briefly explained a bit the roadmap before, but now that we have gone into a restricted go live, what we wanted is to learn from real experience. We've learned from that last year already because we've done a proof of concept with 4 brands, 2 logistic operator, and a customer authority doing product journey using our infrastructure. We've done that last year already, but at that time, and there is a great video somewhere on the internet on YouTube that you can find. I will also share the details. But the bottom line is that this proof of concept demonstrated that it works, but it worked because we were, as EUIPO, controlling all the assets. What we've done this year is that we've released this asset to the community. And what we want to do is work with the community in live environment through the pilots. So concretely, what are we talking about? Until mid-July, the brands can apply. But from September to November, what we intend to do is to have up to 5 pilots. Each pilot would be considered around at least a brand, a logistic operator, and a custom authority. each pilot would at least consider 50 products that would be shipped from outside the EU inside the EU, being inspected by the customer and then released and get to their end destination. We expect to see different industry verticals, not just the most expensive goods, but also normal, yet digitally enabled type of products. And the intent is to learn from these pilots, provide the lessons learned in December with the meeting with the EU officials to discuss the result, but also the project roadmap. And we won't do a project roadmap until we get this result from the pilots. We already have ideas about what we want to enhance in our baseline infrastructure. We do. We already have that in our pipeline, but we want to hear from the community and then make sure that when we release the final set of assets at the end of this year, which is the IP wallet, and then brands are essentially left alone in front of all this infrastructure, we give them enough incentives and understanding of the added value of the overall architecture. And we want to continue this journey in 2025, knowing and giving a sense to all the parties who will join this infrastructure that they have this feeling that we are not stopping just here. We are committed to make this work and get it adopted. That means not only having adoption from the players themselves, so the brands and the freight forwarders, and also the customs, which is already a huge challenge, but also to make sure that we look at to take an international space station view of the world and understand that logistics, they're worldwide. And so what we need to do if this technology is interesting and start to get adopted is to try and discuss with other continents, other countries, so that the registered trademark are not just used for the EU, but they could be used tomorrow to the US, Japan, South Korea, China, just to give you a number of examples. And so they could also do on their side an equivalent, and we could have links between the registration of trademarks around the globe. And then you could of course think even deeper in the line of the DPP of who else as a public institution could give credentials to brands for their products. Joachim mentioned that before, but you can think about chemical list of chemicals contained in a product. You can think of the European conformity. You can think of health and safety regulation. You can think of environmental regulation. There's a lot to unravel here. We're just seeing the beginning. We're trying to lead by example on our side on trademark, but you can imagine that the sky is the limit when we talk about self-sovereignty, handing over to the owners of accreditation the power to do things they were before asking agencies to do. They could do that on their own, and that's the future, I think.
Speaking of which, you mentioned there are other initiatives. How the interoperability with the other initiatives? What do you think, Joachim or Nicolas, about this?
If I may, very briefly, and I think Nicolas and I, we have a lot of discussions regularly with our colleagues on these points. We are, of course, coordinating all of that. What you are aware is that at the moment we are in a sort of, let's say, interregnum. We have finalized our work program of the current Commission. We have now a process that started with the elections of the European Parliament. We then get the next European Commission with the next 5-year work program, and that is, of course, the moment in time, depending, of course, on who will be president and commissioners, what their priorities will be on putting all of these things together. The good thing from my perspective, and we've seen that from the impressive presentation from Nicolas, is that we have a lot of ingredients on the ground. It is not the question anymore whether there is use of blockchain, if these things can be done, etc. It is existing, it is out there. And this is a massive advantage that we have in Europe compared to most parts of the world. I'm aware that crypto adoption is higher in a lot of countries outside Europe, especially where there's not a legacy system. But if you see the interface between the public sector having its responsibilities in the areas that we have described so far, plus working together with the private sector, we are world leading. We have the EBSI infrastructure. It will now be turned to some extent into the European edict, but at the end of the day, the nodes are there, the experience and the commitment of our policies is there to remain as it is at the European level. We have tons of documents out there, not only the documents Nicolas has referred to, but also a lot of things to learn about blockchain, to look into the applications as such. There's an impressive work done by INATBA and others on going into the standardization community, the technical committees, in order to develop all these technical standards. There is the work related to that in finance, not only on MiCA and the DLT pilot, but other things. There is our first ideas on the metaverse. What we aim at, and that is at least my perception of this, is that in the future, we will go into a sort of space that you would best describe as Web3 from a decentralized perspective, which means that what you trade in the future, what you create, what is done by communities everywhere, whether they are business communities or not, is that you create belief systems within communities that create and safely transfer value in blockchain-based systems. And value can be intellectual property, value can be money in finance, value can be any information that is related to products, as we are discussing here before, or value is anything else. Value is a normative concept. So essentially what we're aiming at is a complete integration of these considerations, where at the end of the day, it should not matter so much whether something is financial regulation or real economy regulation or whatever, but a space that governs the creation and transfer of value. And this is a horizontal thing that is based on functionality. So whatever fulfills a functionality should have the same rules that apply to that. And that brings us back to the principles we are discussing here again: open source, interoperability, really the bottom-up approach that we are taking. We have nothing centralized that we are working or that we are building. Everyone sees us as a centralized public sector, which in a lot of contexts we actually are. But if you look at how these programs are being built, actually, I would consider us much more a DAO, as I would consider ourselves as a centralized entity. Because at the end of the day, we know that when you have these requirements that Nicolas has described, that we see in these other contexts here, where you have, again, centralized data pools, centralized governance of these things, we end up in a situation where we have been in the 2007-2008 financial crisis, where the whole systemic risk comes from centralized structures and not decentralized structures, which is why we are decentralizing everything here with that integrative view in mind. That it is practically difficult, I completely acknowledge. But the good thing, in my opinion, is that this is now driven forward by everything that happened in the space, in the gaming community, in the innovation done by the young generation that grows up organically with digital technologies. What we are only governing now is to take stock of the issues that have to be dealt with and to look at the transition process. But what we are talking here today, in 20 years, will be the absolute norm. And this is something where we are fully convinced about, which basically means that we contribute our part, but I think we are on a very good track. We haven't resolved all the problems by far. We haven't resolved all the problems. But if you imagine that Bitcoin emerged 15 years ago, that we have declared 8 years ago or 9 years ago that this is an innovation priority for the Commission, in this very short time frame, we have massively advanced.
Great. Carsten, you are coming from the field, actually, from the other side. You mentioned that you're working in several governments and several continents. What is your point of view about all this, what we've heard now, and what is your experience with the other governments and the other continents?
Oh, I think I can compare this to the US Department of Homeland Security first. I think the Department of Homeland Security, they also look into the same technologies using decentralized identifiers, using verifiable credentials for a lot of customs use cases, e-commerce, steel, oil and gas, personal identity, entering into the country via customs and border protections, visa processes. I think there are lots of looking into these things. What is very interesting, the Department of Homeland Security, it's very similar technology. What you see here, there's the two differences. First, they don't like blockchain. Yeah, they try to do it without blockchain, which is difficult because at some point in time you find out you need the so-called verifiable data registry, which is a blockchain, a registry where you can register your identifiers, where you can register a trust list, where you eventually can anchor a revocation list. So this is missing. If you don't do blockchain, it's kind of a challenge. But the platform security is trying to do this. And I think the biggest difference is they're not interested in building big open source projects. So they are interested in building open APIs, yeah. So that open APIs are defined. They work with world-class companies, and the world-class companies are the implementer. They implement the technology, and then they do a lot of end-by-end testing to make sure interoperability is there. And I think that they're not so much concerned about open source. They're more concerned about open APIs. I think that's one difference, but it's just the Department of Homeland Security. And then when I talk about the US, and that's also interesting, when I ask them, hey, do you have a European blockchain service infrastructure? Because it is very, very useful. Maybe I come back why I think this is super useful. But then the US people tell us, no, we don't have it. We don't believe so much in the government. We believe in the private sector to sort this out. If there is a blockchain and which blockchain, this has to do the private sector. And there's not so much, I don't know any, but maybe there are some government projects to establish a government a public service blockchain infrastructure, such as the European blockchain service infrastructure. That's interesting. And we have a working product in the US, which is doing authorized trading partner credentialing. So this is digital identity for companies and digitization as a license to operate in the pharmaceutical sector. And that's called authorized trading partner credential, license to operate. The use case is extremely simple. Just digital identity plus one credential plus one set of API calls. So it's super simple. And what's interesting, the US pharma sector, they decided 5 years ago that they would like to have a decentralized solution for implementing the so-called Drug Supply Chain Security Act. And the key reason why they want to have a decentralized solution is that they said if we have a centralized solution, then we have big issues in terms of business confidentiality. That it's based the same thinking what we have in Europe in terms of the GDPR. This has the US pharma supply chain, and they said we need a decentralized solution. Primarily, if we have a decentralized solution, no one can correlate lookup transactions. But if I have a centralized solution, I scan every barcode, 2D data metrics, I do lookup, and then I have a lot of metadata. So when is which product scanned by which party in which location, and the big companies don't want to have any centralized entity to have these metadata, and for that reason they said we decentralize it, and that's why we have the MediLedger. We use the public Ethereum blockchain to anchor decentralized identifiers and the trust list. The trust list is very similar to what EBSI is doing. And for that reason, I think that's a little bit the other approach, like open APIs, not so much open source, and blockchain will be sorted out by the private sector. But I would like to come back to EBSI, why I think this is brilliant, because when you look in the EIDAS 2.0, and we think that in a very short term, there is OID wallets everywhere for all different use cases, for humans, citizens, and for companies, organizations. And the EIDAS section 11 says there will be qualified electronic ledgers. And we believe this is one of the biggest innovations I have seen in years in the blockchain space, because we're not talking about the public blockchain and not talking about the private or consortium blockchain. We're talking about the qualified electronic ledger, a qualified blockchain that's operated by trust service providers in accordance to European standards, security and compliance requirements that are endorsed by the cyber agencies. And this brings, from my perspective, trust in a blockchain to an entire new level. And my understanding is that the idea is that kind of this will be further standardized, and then EBSI will eventually be a qualified electronic ledger or qualified blockchain. And when you have this in place, then you have a legal compliance stamp on the entire infrastructure. And this is, from my perspective, a complete game changer.
Great. Thank you, Carsten. Patrick, what are your stance on this as a researcher from a technical university in Dortmund?
Yeah, thank you very much. So for me, this is a really interesting topic also to see that we have something like a blueprint with industry partners and to get this in practice. For me, it's always a little bit interesting to see this and also to have some questions also about how it is developed. So for example, when we're talking about decentralization, which partners are included. So these are huge problems. And also when we take a look, we in Dortmund, for example, have the Open Logistics Foundation, where we work together with all the big logistics partner. But yeah, we see that it's not easy to work together with everyone and to get all on one table, and yeah, to have really something like a standard or to have something like a data model and to adopt these processes, because everyone has their own idea how to do things. And I think it's really interesting to see how it will develop and how to how it will be how it will work at the end. And also it's really interesting for me to see that you are looking at the process but are not bounded to the blockchain. Because when we take a look, for example, at Gaia X, Manufacturing X and something like this, they also said, okay, we don't want to take a blockchain as a central element, more like a peer-to-peer system. And we also need to be compliant to these systems and to have something like a system that is really compliant with every industrial system. And so this is really something I will say that's a good thing, and standards are the enabler for such processes. But always when we're taking a look at blockchain and blockchain problems, we have the input and output problems. So when we put something in, it's not directly a secure thing at the end. So it's something we also have to take a look at. So the blockchain avoids that something gets manipulated, but it doesn't mean that at the end the data is correct. So this is also something we have to talk about when we are talking about blockchain. And we need, for example, when we take a look at the solutions, and also, for example, when I work on a solution, we need a higher degree of automatization. So blockchain solutions are often not that easy to use. So we need something like a wallet. You have to create your ID there. You have to interact somehow. You have currencies, you need to get the currency somehow, and to also to interact with all these elements. So it's not that easy. And I think the end solution for a problem like this is that we don't really see the blockchain. So I think when we don't see the blockchain and don't realize that we use it, then we have a good degree of solution and also technology, because then blockchain is really at the point where it is usable. So I also think that we have in the future a few problems with the blockchain. So for example, when we take a look at encryption, so we have decentralized elements, but encryption is not that often included in blockchains. So at the end, we can also read the data out of the blockchain, and we need to avoid this because it's not completely anonymized. So at the end, you can somehow find out who's at the end, for example, in a DID or is using a DPP, and then we have legal problems. So this is also something we have to respect in the future and take a look how we can solve these issues and find out how to deal with it. So for me, it's really interesting to see some solutions like this, and I'm really looking in the future how it will look like in, I would say, 5 years, how it developed, which standards we have there, and how the industry is reacting on solutions like this.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Patrick.
One thing that you mentioned, Nicolas, and also Joachim, is about mass adoption and how we also encourage other governments, other regions, perhaps, to use similar infrastructure so that mass adoption is encouraged, not only coming from the industry, because the benefit is obvious to a corporate. Governments may not have elsewhere than in Europe as sophisticated infrastructures, and I'm talking about IT systems, payment systems, etc. How do you, as the EU institutions, how do you engage and how do you encourage other governments, other regions to look at what we're doing in Europe and how perhaps to mirror our infrastructures so that interoperability, but between governments, is easier?
Joachim, allow me to answer from the small lens before you give the wider picture. So in our IP, little intellectual property world, players are known. And so when we talk about EUIPO as a structure of intellectual property offices in the EU, you can expect that we are also collaborating with almost any single intellectual property office in the world. We've been in touch. We are talking on a numerous basis, also because, well, at the end of the day, our core business is to make sure that a brand has its trademark safe wherever it goes. And so in our small world, it's relatively easy to have this platform for communication around the world. And we have the chance also in our specific case to also have the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is on top, which is sitting on top of everybody. And so we have safe space to talk with intellectual property offices and share our lessons learned. We are going to do that in December for in our case for our project, to just share the best practice and see whether there is an interest for other countries to pick up. And we already received positive signs about this already during the lifetime of the project. Secondly, that's intellectual property. That's very nice. But then we have to also look at intermediaries and customs. Customs, again, we are very lucky to already have a lot of customs to discuss with at the EU, and we are also lucky to have a collaborative approach between the different customs in the EU with the Director General of TaxSud at the European Commission. But on top of that, we also are lucky to have the World Customs Organization. So yet again, here we have the appropriate agora to discuss and share the best practices. We've already talked to WCO in the past about our solution. They're expecting us to come back to them to explain a bit where we are and what we've done. And finally, for the logistic operator and for the intermediaries at large and the brands, us at the observatory department, we are also lucky to have a stakeholder network inside our observatory department with the representatives of the major intermediaries and brands to whom we discuss on a frequent, recurrent basis. And so on that part, we are also lucky to have the medium to convey and share the best practices and try to get this architecture adopted as widely as possible. Now, of course, we may also have consideration paid to how in the future the EU would give support, additional incentives to use this infrastructure. But like Joachim said, we've done this project because we felt there was a need to do it. We didn't want to impose it. And we think that the incentive by large is sufficient, including with views in the future regulation, as Joachim was mentioning. So that's a bit on my small part, but I'll let Joachim to address that in the wider context of the technologies as such. Joachim?
Okay.
Nicola, I think what you call your small part is actually an immense part, but it might be useful to distinguish two things. They, of course, all come together, but essentially we have two things. We have a lot of areas like the one that you are describing, where we indeed have a limited number of well-known players. They all share a certain interest. Authorities would like to ensure that documents that are produced for regulatory purposes are the originals, are not fake, are trustworthy, and that the information can be interchanged. And that is very similar in the field of customs authorities and anti-counterfeiting, as it is for financial authorities and, for example, on things that are quite close to financial instruments, but not financial instruments. So, for example, crypto assets under the MiCA regulation, as they are in other areas as well. That is a highly important part where at the end of the day, we do not have that much, perhaps, of a data and decentralization issue, because public authorities have the right to ask for certain well-defined information. It is in documents, and we are only, and I'm saying only, of course, with a big grin in my face, we have only to ensure that the process works, which is very difficult as such. Of course, that is indeed a relatively small part of the crypto Web3 blockchain, however we name it, universe out there. And as regards that one, I personally believe, and I have my anarchistic views on that I neither believe in global harmonization nor do I find any form of regulation coherence at global scale desirable, because if we take self-organization, if we take decentralization, a bottom-up approach seriously, this needs to come from various corners by itself. And we are happy to put into the public domain some principles we show on certain things that are most closely as they can be in the public sector, to our interests, which is what we're doing in this project here. But we should absolutely not extrapolate that to DeFi, to DAOs, to NFTs, to everything that we are discussing here. These are completely different things, which is why I also think that, as you said, Nicolas, there is an interest, I think, of companies to take this up. But at the end of the day, this is voluntary. And this is something that I forgot to say, but I find very important. People in Europe, not so much perhaps companies, but also companies, but especially citizens, completely distrust public wallets, and for very good reasons. I would myself never choose voluntarily for any public wallet where here, for example, in Belgium, everything is mixed together, or for a digital euro that indeed is not cash-like, but will always be subject to some control. This is not trustworthy. So the question is where this trustworthy come from, and the trustworthiness comes from private solutions. And I think that is also where the innovation and the whole benefit of the blockchain space comes from. But certain elements here indeed need to be more regulated for public interest. And we mentioned all of that, from the environment to labor protection to all these things here. That's a political decision where, if the politicians decide to do that for hopefully good reasons, then we provide a technical solution where, again, we hope for the voluntary uptake. It's the interest for companies. All the rest should be left out of this. And I think this is a very important caveat in this discussion here. Let's focus on what we do. And I think in the future, if I look at what is already now in the pipeline for the next 5 years, not only on the digital product passport, we see a massive interest of public sector organization and sorry.
Let's save that for the fireside chat with Sebastian.
We still have that because I thought we are fully now in the panel.
No, we are not.
Okay,
we
I'm
still
very
have
sorry.
it.
So
The next 50. No worries. So, guys, I hope you have enjoyed the panel so far, and let's dive in now in the fireside chat, the EU Commission strategy for industrial innovation and sovereignty, with Sebastian, my colleague from the Bundesblock, and I leave you with Sebastian now, and I hope you're there.
I'm here. Hello.
Great. Go on, fire away. Take it from there.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel, for leading this webinar together with Izzat-Begum so far. Joachim, we wanted to talk before closing this up a little bit about, you mentioned the interregnum, about what's going to happen in the next cycle, if you want. If we look at EBSI-ELSA and EUIPO's work as a Lighthouse project and as maybe the most advanced end-to-end project design that we have out there, we will see more building blocks being added. We will see a digital euro. We will see commercial bank money tokens. We will see identity wallets. And while we mentioned the principles already in Europe, open source, data protection, etc., do you think that the incoming commission and the incoming politicians at the parliament do have or will get quickly enough a coherent strategy to push this in the right direction, or is it a bit too much of an island approach yet?
I think one must be reasonable in addressing that, but there's a couple of features that I find relevant. And for me, actually, I get this question a lot, Sebastian. We have talked about that also before. The key underlying feature that I see from the, let's say, societal perspective is that this parliament is on average 5 years younger than the previous parliament. A lot of people have changed over half, and so it's not so important really where they stand politically for our domain here, but that they are younger, that they are better equipped to deal with the questions on digitalization we are dealing with. And for example, if you take the issue on data protection and privacy, and to ensure that big authorities do not turn this into a sort of deep state approach towards controlling all the data and documents that we have, there is a very coherent agreement from the far left to the far right, including the liberals, including the Greens. I mean, You get the problems when you start, for example, discussing this completely silly thing on energy consumption of Bitcoin that we have hopefully behind us, and all these things or other areas as such. But if we really look at the question of what would we like to keep decentralized and what needs to be up to control from the state, there's much more alignment than we think. That's not so much directly put into terms of blockchain and crypto. That is more in general discussions as regards to civil rights and liberties and what should be indeed be centrally controlled or not. We know also that right-wing parties are more open to financing through cryptocurrencies than other parties, so they might have a specific interest, but they come together at a certain level and discuss this here. This is something that makes me hopeful. The second element is that everyone in Brussels now seems to agree that we have too much regulation. The past Commission focused a lot on regulation, and everyone, to be honest, is fed up with it. So the Commission as such currently, as far as I know, at least in the field of finance, also in many things that we are discussing here, does not have an interest to come with the next wave of regulation. I can tell also from discussions with my colleagues that no one from our side has an interest, for example, in coming with a MiCA 2.0 on DeFi regulation, because we think that is impossible and it is also useless, but also in the areas that we are discussing here. So everyone seems to be now in the mode, also in the parliament, again, to say that all this regulation now needs to be made to work. We need to see how it is taken up, how these infrastructures that we have been building and the use cases are taken up by industry, and what we can really do for the hard stuff. And the hard stuff is not bringing regulations out. The hard stuff is working on the interfaces, regardless of how we call them. It is working on the skills and mindsets, and it is also really working on the promotion of the ideas that all of this is useful, and it is challenged. Those of you who have read the last Europol report 2 weeks ago note that Europol lists as a problematic technology for their understanding, which I find completely misguided, not only, let's say, obfuscation technologies like mixers and coin joins and everything, but suddenly also zero-knowledge proofs. It's in this report that basically zero-knowledge proofs are a concern for authorities. And this is, I wouldn't say in a public discussion bullshit, but I mean, it's let's call it problematic. So the Commission luckily has already in EIDAS and other areas declared that we like actually zero-knowledge proofs, and this has a lot of good things, but it shows where the challenge is coming from. The challenge is less coming from politicians or from regulators as such, who are used to get their orders and work something out, but it is coming from uninformed authorities. And this is where I think the bottom line is really also for the education. And that's a plea from us also to industry. And I think I also speak for Nicolas and the colleagues here. We really want everyone to show the utility, the use cases, because you cannot have in the political domain an abstract discussion on the merits of blockchain. You lose the people. 1% understands it, 99% don't understand it. But you have to show why you do it. It's very obvious in the case of detecting fake products for all the reasons that Nicolas has given, but also for other things. And for example, I'm extremely happy that in this solution, EBSI-ELSA, we have NFTs, because the political understanding in general of NFTs is that these are bought apes or silly stuff, basically, that is out there as a money printing machine, which is only a very tiny part, but actually we use a lot of NFTs in different areas as such. So why you do something, what the benefits is for companies, for citizens, that is the very important narrative, because that only allows us to ring fence the influence from outside, from uninformed authorities that want to get us off track. And this, for me, is a much deeper challenge than a composition of any parliament or the work program of the Commission as such. However you will frame it, what Nicolas and the team have been doing, what we are now working on the digital product passport, it will be done. It might have different names. So you know that, for example, the Commission is very creative in giving different names to things. Stable coins are not stable coins, because some people don't like the idea that stable coins are actually more stable than the euro or other things like that. So we don't call them stable coins. We don't speak about programmable payments, because some people don't like that. So we speak about conditional payments. Now, conditional payments is I go to a bakery and buy a loaf of bread for €3. That's a conditional payment. A programmable payment is I put something on a smart contract, but we call it differently. Okay, fine. So certain things you will not perhaps see, but it doesn't mean that we don't do that. Quite to the contrary, I think we are beyond that point of no return, to put it like this. But we need the cooperation with industry to take this up, to frame the narrative, and to help us in explaining the utility of all that to the new people. And that is what we are doing right now. Everyone is already trying to engage with the new members of parliament, also with the future new commission. The moment they return from their summer holidays in early September, they will see a full fire of help coming to them, because everyone is now already trying to engage with them and inform them and do that. It's important, though, to do that in a meaningful way. And there I hope that what Nicolas and the team, what the others have done so far is a very good basis to start from discussion. But let's not be mistaken, we have terribly hard work to do, not so much in terms of political programs and projects, but really of educating the next wave of decision makers, because that's what it is. It sits here. It doesn't sit in the technology. It sits in the head, whether something is good or bad.
Thank you. Let's quickly talk about dissemination and ask a last question to Nicolas. You have to leave as well. Looking at, let's say, the private and public sector collaboration, at least we as business associations, both within at the international level, but also at the national level, at Bundesblock, of course, we're trying to support and help. Yeah, we have the producing industry in Germany, or the machinery industry, so we have to convey that as well. And we're going to publish this industrial blockchain report in July that will also hopefully provide a good overview. But Nicolas, you mentioned it rightfully. So EUIPO has basically a working relationship with every company in Europe, almost. Did you find it hard to grow your community out of that, let's say, from that starting level? And what will you do to inform the remaining companies that have not yet looked into blockchain tech?
Thanks, Sebastian, for the question. I think it's about also understanding the fitness of a solution based on the needs from the industry. One takeout from all the years we spent talking with a lot of different brands about this project. And mind you, we started with a blockathon back in 2018, a sort of a hackathon, and it was very hyped at this stage. And I don't think there was that many successful hackathon based on public service since then. And there was a lot of hype back then from the brand, because we were trying to design something. We didn't know how. We knew that blockchain should be part of the mix, and we wanted to fight fakes, and we had to do this as a whole. What we realized along the way, and that's why it took us so long to get where we are right now, is that you have to make sure that whatever you provide, as much interoperable, as much open source, as much free it can be, and as an enabler it can become, it has to be fit with the effort that the brand and the other parties are going to put into using this on their daily operation. So what we've done also last year was to do a cost-benefit analysis of our future infrastructure. That was kind of a foresight analysis of how much would it cost for brands to use our system, and we found that even though the cost at the end of the road would be somewhere down between 1 to 2, perhaps 3 cents, it's already a lot. And you can do that when you have a margin on products that is huge. That's okay. You can't do that if you have a €1 t-shirt. And let's assume let's understand this. There will be limits to how you can use this technology, including the decentralization part, but just in general, DPPs, there will be a limit to how much you can use and trust this technology, because you'll have to cut corners. If I have to put a DPP on a t-shirt that costs €1, I can tell you for sure that as brand, that's going to be very complex to implement. It's going to be very complex. And the information, as much as you will have it, you will probably have it the same way that is produced by now. You'll be redirected through a QR code or whatever into the brand webpage, where a list of information will be shared to you. You won't be able to make sure that the product you have is the one that you see in front of you on the DPP. You won't be able to have anti-tampering technique on this. You won't be able to even have recycling condition about the product, because, well, it's going to be distributed by main distribution lines. So we have to acknowledge that as much as we want DPPs to become a thing, as much as we want to preserve consumers from fakes, all of this has to be faced in front of the real economy. And that's why for us, the main challenge here, and the brand we've talked to on a daily basis, that's what they're telling you. They're telling you, look, it's nice. If it's cost effective and it doesn't cost too much on my margin, then I'm going to do it because I see a benefit. If not, I'm not going to do it.
Okay, thank you, Nicolas, and good luck with the project. And now also with the call of interest. We hope you get a lot of interesting entries. Good luck with your travels tonight. So let me ask the last question to Joachim. We always say that, if you just think of blockchain and talk about one-dimensional use cases, there might be other legacy technologies that might do the job as well. But as soon as we talk about different dimensions, then the synergies, if you use blockchain technology, add up. Now you mentioned smart contracts, you mentioned programmable business processes, even though they might be called differently. How can we integrate this, including incentivization through the use of either in the future digital currencies or also industry tokens into this landscape? Do we need such a multidimensional pilot or project rollout next in order to really underline what Nicolas said? There's of course cost limits to these large scale projects, but if we look at the positive side and potential returns either through saving money at the efficiency front or kicking in additional business models. So is this the next level, multidimensional projects?
In a way it is, and I have to apologize. I have to leave in a little bit more than 5 minutes. You were not there, Sebastian, at the beginning.
That's the deadline, yes.
But it's a good wrap-up question, I think, at least from my side. Look, everyone in the space, regardless of where they are facing the same problems. And I give you another example that we haven't talked yet about. That's energy. I'm currently in discussion with the leading people to do basically the same what Nicolas is doing on green energy. So at the moment, I understand when you think you consume green energy, the question whether that is green or not is defined on an annual average. So see from the different sources how that is produced, and then either it's a little bit more green or a little bit less green or not green at all. There's in some countries, Denmark is one of them, an attempt by the leading companies and the network operator to get this assurance down to 1 kilowatt hour. And they tell me that already now the granularity can even perhaps go down to 15 kilowatt minutes. What that basically shows you is very similar to what Nicolas showed you with the t-shirt, that there is, of course, also efficiency gains and an inbuilt progress in these things, that we get more and more granular, but we will not get granular down to zero, which is perhaps not necessary. I think this will come from all sides together, and it will happen. Do we need a sort of integrated thinking about that? In a way, yes, but why would it come from a public sector? Public sector is therefore the task that we have defined. I think there's a natural interest of everyone in the industry, but also in society as such, if we really move into metaverses and Web3 like that, to see the coherence of elements and then basically have from the sourcing of energy, of whatever type of energy, to the financing of processes in the value chain, from trade finance, insurance documents, etc., integrity of documents, to the production, to the dissemination, to the governance of these processes, to use ever more of the technologies that we provide. And we haven't yet spoken about things like artificial intelligence, where, as you know, INAPA has a task force on convergence of AI and blockchain, where a lot of interesting models are being designed. We haven't yet spoken about quantum computing, where I can tell you that the security authorities in Europe are frightened as hell of that because they think it completely kills their centralized security system. And to my knowledge, the only system that can already now provide solutions to the quantum threat is decentralized, especially Ethereum-based blockchain infrastructures, because the standards are being developed and the technical solutions. That will take time to adapt. But you see where I'm coming from. So I am less concerned about the system as such. I think it will go in that direction by nature, especially through everyone now moving organically in this space. We should very well define what our task is, and we should be a little bit modest, I think, in defining what our task is, because with very limited resources, this is as much as I can do. if you look inside the Commission, and I don't go into any granular detail, if we take 50,000 people within the Commission, I would be surprised if we have more than 20 people who actually know reasonably well what a blockchain is and what it does. We are extremely stretched on resources, so it's our own interest to do with that. At the same time, we have thousands and thousands of people at the national level that are there to control and implement our rules, which is again a massive education problem. This is why we are creating sandboxes and stuff like that. And I think this proliferation of co-learning spaces is the key to success. It's not for us to define the systemic view. It's for us to show that things are possible even in a public sector. It is for us to lead by example, but the example needs to be taken up by everyone in the space to build on that. And for that reason, actually, I'm very optimistic that it can work. But again, to go down to granularity, no, granularity is not the issue. Trust is the issue. If I have a company that I can trust, it's a different issue than I have a company that I can't trust. And producing T-shirts, I know perfectly well which company I can trust and which company I don't trust and where they come from. I mean, that's obvious as anything out there. The moment we get more inbuilt control mechanisms, so I'm not speaking of social scores, but peer-to-peer platforms where information is exchanged decentrally, where crowds can gather information and can inform, like young people do in the gaming space, of this is good, this is bad, let's try this, etc. We get self-control mechanisms in decentralized platforms in the house in the future, etc., that can work very efficiently actually at the end of the day. And we should get a little bit away from the notion that it is the public sector top-down that controls everything in the future. It will be the opposite.
Great, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed. Let's wrap it up. And Sebastian and Izzat-Begum, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And I hope we have next time the chat, as you mentioned, Joachim, with the AI and the quantum computing. I could imagine that's a very interesting topic, Izzat-Begum. Let's talk about that the next time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you on behalf of the Bundesblock and NAPA members to be here. And let's wrap it up. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.